I was just on this podcast with Tanya Joy, and we were talking about being a trauma mama and what that journey is like as you move through the trauma and now you're parenting after the trauma, but sometimes it still feels like you're stuck in the trauma. And as you're looking at everything that you thought was going to be your dreams and your goals and your expectations, you realize they've just like burned in a roaring house fire down around your ears. And your ears are still pumping with the roaring fire noise, and the flames have still singed your hair and your skin, and you're sitting there and you're looking at the rubble of what used to be everything you thought was yours and was real and was safe, and you're like, what just happened? How do I move on from this? What do I do? So I'm going to give you the house fire analogy for post-trauma growth. After betrayal trauma, domestic violence, intimate partner abuse, religious trauma, double abuse, when your people that should have helped have not been there for you and helped you get safe and made the trauma stop. And if you know somebody who ought to hear this, go ahead and hit share. This is a really good time to do that. I want you to imagine with me that you're sitting in the rubble of your house fire. And you have some options. Some people, when their houses burn down, they choose to simply walk away. They're done. They're not going to sift through the rubble. They're not going to get their wounds tended to. They don't care if it gets infected or not. They're not going to rebuild. They're not doing anything. They're not even getting checked out for a medical exam. They're just peacing out. They're walking away. They've turned their back and they're done. You could do that. That's an option. Another option that you have is to come back every day indefinitely and just sit in the rubble, rain or shine. And if it's pouring rain, it just mixes with your tears, and you sit and you just mourn and wail and grieve long past the season of grieving, and you just smear the rain and the ashes and the soot on yourself, and you don't shower, and you still don't get your wounds tended to, and you just stay there and you live in the rubble. And you kind of set up housekeeping and you limp along, and there's no running water and there's no proper toilet facilities, there's no electricity, there's no roof over your head, but you are not leaving the rubble because you invested in what it was before it was rubble, and you're not going to leave the rubble. And that's kind of called the sunk cost factor, because you put so much into it. Even if it's sunk, you're still just thinking about the cost you invested, and you're not going to fix it or change it. You're just going to stick with it in the rubble. Or you could decide to clear the rubble. And this is where the heavy labor comes in. Now, it's not necessarily harder work, even though it seems like it up front. It's kind of like a cash payment up front, but then you don't have any interest later. And sitting in the rubble or just completely walking away feels like it's easier up front, but there's going to be a really hefty APR on that interest, that compounding interest or whatever it is. I'm not an accountant. I don't do finances or investments, but you know what I mean. So it's kind of like paying with credit when you just sit in the rubble, because you're feeling more familiar in the moment, but you are not really doing anything about it long term. And the interest rate is going to choke you over time. But your third option is to get up and start lifting the rubble. And this, it is heavy labor. By the time you're done at the end of the day, every day, working through the rubble, you're pulling and you're lifting beams and you're pulling lumber and you're carrying pieces of concrete that have exploded in the flames, and you're sorting through the things and lifting walls that fell over. And it's heavy, heavy work. And at the end of every day, your back is screaming at you and your legs are like jelly and your hands have scrapes and blisters that eventually turn into calluses as they get stronger and less sensitive, and your shins have scrapes and bloody bruises from getting snagged on rebar, and it's heavy work. And for a while, just like the person who chooses to sit in the ashes and the rubble and do nothing, you are still covered. You're drenched in sweat and rain, and you're covered in soot and ashes and smeared with the charcoal remains of what you thought was going to be a happy life. And sometimes you want to quit, because as you are pulling up the pieces of rubble, you don't know if you can keep doing this until the foundation is clean. But every now and then, as you drag away the trash and you sweep up the combustible parts that ended up just burning down to ashes, you find something glistening that survived the flames. And it's something valuable. It's something that lasted through the house fire. And when you find those things, you take them out and you polish them off, and they may have some charred edges, or they may have some scrapes, or they may have some smoke stains that are permanent reminders. But you hold those in your hands, and you know this valuable thing is why you are clearing this rubble instead of walking away from it or sitting in the middle of it and ignoring the piles. And you hold these valuable scraps in your hands, and you set them gently aside for cleaning and debridement, to take away anything that is left that is not supposed to stay, and for washing and polishing. And you're going to rebuild with those things, those little pieces, those nuggets of good and healthy and whole that are valuable, that you've saved. So you set those aside, and everything else, if it was just completely combustible, it gets swept up with the ashes and dumped in the landfill. If it was just trash and now it's rubble and rebar and broken concrete and leftover twisted pieces of metal that are no longer useful, it gets hauled off, put in the dumpster. And finally, at the end of this, you're looking at a clean, clear foundation, and you sweep it off, and then you pressure wash it, and you start inspecting it for cracks. Because if you're going to rebuild, you want to make sure that there are no cracks in the foundation. As much as you can find, you're looking to repair everything so that when you rebuild, it is a solid, safe, reliable foundation. Some people call this process deconstruction, and they mock it. They're the ones who would either rather sit in the rubble or turn around and walk away and never get their wounds checked. Ignore them. Go through and check your foundation for cracks. And as you have checked your foundation for cracks and carefully, meticulously put in the work and the assessment to repair one by one, you will find that there are people who come and help you day by day, because they care about the health and the safety and the reliability of your foundation as much as you do. And those are your real friends. And sometimes you may go and help them because they may have had a house fire too. And you help them inspect their foundation, and you share what you've learned, and you build each other up, and you support and encourage each other in the process. And finally, you get to the end, and you're looking at this foundation, and it's cleared, and it's cleaned, and the cracks are repaired, and now you get to rebuild. And somehow in the process, you're still tired at the end of every day, but your blisters have healed into calluses, and your muscles have strengthened, and your stamina has improved, and your lungs aren't smoke damaged anymore, and you can breathe, and you bend and you squat and you lift and you carry, and you are stronger and more whole than you have ever been before you ever knew what it was like to survive a house fire, even though you still carry the scars. And then you rebuild, and you make house plans, and you call an architect, and you figure out what you want in your new house place. And figuring prominently in your new build will be the pieces that survived the fire, the elements that were strong enough and valuable enough not to be consumed from the trauma. And when you are finally there, you take your experience, and whenever you hear of a house fire, you talk to them, and you encourage them not to just sit in the rubble and not to just walk away, but to do the heavy lifting and then to rebuild. Because that is what we do when we have walked through the fire. We turn back with buckets of water in our hands and reaching out for those who are consumed in the blaze and who want to find healing and safety and wholeness on the other side.